You can't enter here. The lobby is closed for a private meeting.
Sir, I need to
I
get
told
to
you,
the-
no one is allowed past this point. Step aside.
Sir, I am the
Get
new...
out! I won't ask again.
Sir, I am the new manager!
It was a busy afternoon. Customers lined up, pens scratched across deposit slips. The hum of conversation filled the lobby. Among them was a black man, dressed in a crisp suit, carrying a leather folder. His stride was calm, his presence deliberate. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged. But to the security guard stationed at the entrance, that confidence was invisible. All he saw was suspicion. The guard stepped forward, blocking his path. "Sir, I need to know what you're doing here," he said sharply. His tone wasn't courteous. It was commanding, suspicious, dripping with assumption. The man paused, surprised but composed. "I'm here for work," he replied evenly. But the guard's eyes narrowed, scanning him up and down as though searching for a reason to deny him. "Work?" the guard scoffed. "This is a bank. Customers come here to deposit, withdraw, or apply for loans. You don't look like a customer. You don't look like staff either. Show me some ID. Show me proof." His words weren't inquiries. They were accusations, delivered with the weight of authority. The man remained steady. "I don't need to show you anything," he said calmly, but the guard pressed harder. "Don't play games with me," the guard snapped. "I've seen people like you before. Fraud, scams, fake checks. You don't look like someone who belongs behind these counters. Tell me the truth. Are you here to cause trouble?" His voice carried across the lobby, loud enough for other customers to hear. Some slowed their steps, glancing at the confrontation. Others looked away quickly, unwilling to intervene. The tension thickened. The man's calm never wavered. He let the guard's words pile up, each one exposing the bias beneath the badge. He didn't rush to explain. He didn't scramble to justify. He simply waited, letting silence speak louder than protest. But the guard mistook silence for weakness. He pressed harder. "Step aside," the guard ordered. "We're going to escort you out. If you resist, we'll call the police. You've got 30 seconds to cooperate." His hand hovered near his radio, his posture rigid, his tone commanding. The man obeyed calmly, setting down his folder, standing tall, his presence dignified. The guard circled him, scanning, probing, questioning. "You don't look like the kind of man who works here," he sneered. "Tell us the truth. Who are you really?" Customers nearby whispered, some recording on their phones, others shaking their heads. The confrontation was no longer private. It was public, documented, undeniable. The guard's suspicion was on display, his arrogance exposed. "You're making a mistake," the man said quietly. His words were measured, deliberate. But the guard laughed bitterly. "A mistake? No, I'm doing my job. Protecting this bank from people who don't belong. You think you can just walk past me with that folder? Not today." His tone dripped with disbelief, as though the very idea of a black man working in a bank was absurd. The tension thickened further. The guard demanded explanations again, his voice sharp, his stance aggressive. He accused the man of lying, of hiding something, of being suspicious. He spoke as though his assumptions were facts, as though his prejudice was law. The man remained steady. He knew something the guard did not. He let him dig deeper into his own arrogance, piling on accusations, ignoring rights, trampling dignity. Finally, the guard's voice rose to a threat. "If you don't tell me the truth, I'll call the police. Trespassing. Fraud. Whatever charge fits. You've got 30 seconds to explain yourself." His hand hovered near his radio, his eyes locked on the man, daring him to resist. But the man did not resist. He did not flinch. He simply looked at the guard, calm and unshaken, and said, "I am the branch manager." The words landed like thunder. For a moment, silence swallowed the lobby. The guard blinked, stunned, his mouth opening but no words emerging. Customers gasped. Phones captured the moment. The man he had targeted, the man he had accused, the man he had threatened, was not a suspect. He was the branch manager, the very person responsible for running the institution the guard claimed to protect. The guard's face drained of color, His arrogance collapsed into panic. He tried to recover, tried to soften his tone, tried to backtrack. I didn't know. I thought I was just doing my job. But the excuses sounded hollow, desperate, transparent. The damage was done. The humiliation was complete. The man's calm expression never changed. "Your job is to protect," he said. "Not to profile, not to harass, not to deny dignity. Today you forgot that." His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of truth, undeniable and unshakable. The guard swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly. He tried to speak, but no words came. He had been caught, not by force, not by resistance, but by reality. And reality was unforgiving. The words landed like a verdict. "I am the branch manager." Silence swallowed the lobby. The guard froze, his confidence shattered, his authority drained. Customers gasped. Phones captured the moment. Whispers rippled across the room. The man he had accused, the man he had threatened, the man he had tried to humiliate, was not a suspect. He was the branch manager, the very person responsible for running the institution the guard claimed to protect. The guard stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of humiliation. I didn't know. I thought I was just doing my job." But the excuses rang hollow. Everyone had heard the threats, the accusations, the disdain. Everyone had seen the way prejudice had been wielded like a weapon, and now everyone saw the truth. The guard had tried to criminalize the very leader of the bank. The manager's calm never wavered. He looked at the guard steadily, his voice measured but firm. "Your job is to protect," he said. "Not to profile, not to harass, not to deny dignity. Today, you forgot that." His words carried across the lobby, undeniable, unshakable. The guard swallowed hard, his hands trembling, his authority crumbling. The manager did not shout, did not retaliate, did not escalate. He simply picked up his folder, walked past the guard, and entered his office. But the story did not end at the lobby. It was only beginning. Because accountability could not stop with humiliation, it had to continue with justice. That evening, reports were filed, complaints were submitted, human resources was notified, witness statements were collected, videos from customers were uploaded, capturing every word, every gesture, every threat. The guard's misconduct was undeniable, his racial targeting documented beyond dispute. The bank moved swiftly. The guard was suspended, stripped of his duties, placed under investigation. His colleagues whispered, his supervisors frowned. His reputation crumbled. The uniform he had worn so arrogantly now weighed heavy, no longer a badge of authority but a symbol of disgrace. In hearings, the guard tried to defend himself. He claimed he had acted out of caution, out of duty, out of suspicion. He insisted he had not known the man was the branch manager. He argued that his actions were justified, but the evidence told a different story. Witnesses testified to his tone, his threats, his accusations. Videos showed his posture, his aggression, his disdain. Customers described their shock. Bystanders recounted their disbelief. Staff explained their outrage. Every detail painted the same picture. A guard who had allowed prejudice to dictate his actions, who had denied dignity to a man based solely on appearance. The bank's leadership laid out the facts clearly. This was not protection, they argued. This was profiling. This was harassment. This was abuse of authority. They pointed to the guard's words, his threats of removal, his baseless accusations. They reminded the panel that the man had not been a stranger, not a trespasser, not a suspect, but the branch manager, the very leader of the institution. The defense faltered. Their arguments collapsed under the weight of evidence. Their attempts to justify sounded desperate, hollow, transparent. The panel saw through them. They saw not a protector of the bank, but a violator of its values. And when the verdict came, it was clear: guilty. The guard was terminated, his record marked, his career ended. The punishment was severe, the consequences lasting. The very system he had abused now stood against him. The manager walked away, not as a victim, but as a victor. His calm resilience had exposed the rot of prejudice. His dignity had reminded the world that accountability is not optional. It is inevitable. He returned to his office, greeted by respect from staff, validation from customers, recognition of his truth. His presence was celebrated, his authority undeniable. But the story was larger than one guard, larger than one manager, larger than one bank. It was about a system where arrogance collides with accountability, where prejudice collides with resistance, and where justice, though often delayed, can still arrive with force. It was about the countless encounters that never make headlines, the silent battles fought in lobbies, at counters, in workplaces across the nation. It was about the dignity denied, the rights ignored, the humanity questioned. And it was about the resilience of those who refuse to be broken, who stand tall, who demand justice. The guard's downfall became a lesson. Authority without respect is nothing. A uniform without integrity is only fabric. And those who weaponize their position against the innocent may one day find themselves crushed beneath the very values they swore to uphold. The manager continued his work, overseeing operations, guiding staff, serving customers, but the memory of that day lingered. It became part of his story, etched into his identity. Citizens whispered about it, colleagues remembered it. The guard carried it. It was not a scar, it was a badge of resilience. And yet, beyond the bank's walls, the lesson stretched further. It reached into institutions where prejudice still lurked, into workplaces where bias still thrived, into communities where accountability was still resisted. It reminded everyone that justice is not automatic. It must be demanded, defended, delivered. Because prejudice is not just an act, it is a system. And systems do not collapse on their own. They collapse when confronted, when exposed, when resisted by those who refuse to bow. The verdict was not the end. It was only the beginning of a larger reckoning. Because while one guard's downfall made headlines, the truth is that prejudice does not live in a single uniform. It lives in systems, in assumptions, in the quiet corners of institutions where bias hides behind authority. The branch manager knew this. He had lived it long before that day. He had felt the stares, the whispers, the doubts. He had built his career not just against the odds of training and leadership, but against the odds of perception. And so, when the guard tried to block his entry into his own bank, it was not a new story. It was an old story, repeated in a new setting. But this time, the ending was different. The punishment of the guard sent ripples through the institution. Supervisors held meetings, training sessions were scheduled. Words like bias, profiling, and accountability echoed in halls where they had once been ignored. The case became a symbol, a reminder that authority without respect is fragile, that arrogance without truth collapses. But symbols alone are not enough. The manager understood that justice must be more than punishment. It must be prevention. And so he spoke publicly. He gave interviews not to boast, but to teach. He reminded audiences that dignity is not a privilege, it is a right. He explained that employment, wealth, or status should never be the measure of respect. Humanity should be. His words resonated. Viewers saw themselves in his calm resilience. They felt validated in their own experiences of being doubted, dismissed, or denied. They saw that accountability was possible, that arrogance could be challenged, that justice could arrive even in places where it had long been absent. The guard's downfall became more than a cautionary tale. It became a morality play, a workplace drama that exposed the fragility of prejudice. It showed that systems can fail, but individuals can resist. It showed that arrogance can rise, but dignity can stand taller. And it showed that justice, though often delayed, can still arrive with force. Inside the bank, life returned to normal. Customers deposited, staff served, transactions flowed. But the memory of that day lingered. It became part of the branch's story, etched into its identity. Patrons whispered about it. Staff remembered it. The manager carried it. It was not a scar. It was a badge of resilience. And yet, beyond the marble floors and counters, the lesson stretched further. It reached into institutions where prejudice still lurked, into workplaces where bias still thrived, into communities where accountability was still resisted. It reminded everyone that justice is not automatic. It must be demanded, defended, delivered. Because prejudice is not just an act, it is a system. And systems do not collapse on their own. They collapse when confronted, when exposed, when resisted by those who refuse to bow. The guard's punishment was severe: termination, loss of benefits, a record of misconduct. But the true punishment was deeper. It was the collapse of arrogance. It was the realization that authority without integrity is powerless. It was the humiliation of being remembered not as a protector, but as a violator. And for the manager, the victory was not in the hearing alone. It was in the validation of his dignity. It was in the respect of his staff, the recognition of his truth, the reminder that resilience can turn prejudice into accountability, that calm can turn arrogance into collapse. This story is not just about one guard, one manager, one bank. It is about all of us. It is about the moments when prejudice tries to block the door, when arrogance tries to rewrite reality, when authority tries to deny dignity. It is about the choice to stand tall, to resist, to demand justice. Because justice does not care about the color of your skin. It cares about the truth. And the truth on that day in that lobby was undeniable. So let this story be remembered. Let it be told not as a tale of humiliation, but as a lesson of accountability. Let it remind us that authority must be earned, that dignity must be respected, that justice must be delivered. And let it remind us that when prejudice rises, resilience can rise higher. In the end, the guard lost everything he thought gave him power, and the manager gained something far greater: the validation of his humanity, the triumph of his dignity, the proof that justice can prevail. That is the story. That is the lesson. That is the truth.